It's not just for my well-being, but for any being on the planet to be in need just shouldn't be. The laws of equilibrium dictate that the political economy will not equilibrate till the wages in Africa are at par with the wages here. Well, let's welcome to Mama Paul's video podcast. This is a reconstruction of a similar kind of show I did a few years ago, and it was after 9/11 that I did the show. And for about we did like a half-hour show after 9/11, and after 9/11, I was sort of jumping out of my skin. I couldn't just sit on everything that was going on. There was so much going on politically and internationally, nationally, that I found it. I just had to speak out. I just absolutely had to speak out. And this fella came along and he wanted to do a cable access show, and he wanted somebody to be the talent. That was me, and he was going to make advertisements for the local businessmen, and that would be it. So we started to. Okay, hold it a second. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, hello? Who's this? Donald, the Donald, not Donald Duck. Oh, I thought it was Donald Duck. I mean, this is a TV show here, and funny you called. How did you know we started the show up? You know almost everything going on. Well, you're a stable genius. Why wouldn't you? You know a lot that's happening, right? And you think I'm going to make it to number? No, I'm not. No, you're number one. I won't. No, I won't. I don't stand a chance, huh? Listen, it's interesting you called because it's funny. We're both from Queens. Now, yeah, I am. I'm from the eastern side. The western part of Queens, and you're from the eastern part, further out. I was in Sunnyside, Woodside, and you were out by. It's called Jamaica Estates, part of Jamaica. I went to high school near you, but where I was born, did you know my parents saw your dad? Well, they didn't meet him, but they watched him getting arrested, yeah. It was on Queens Boulevard and 46th Street, maybe 48th Street, I'm not exactly positive. I think it was 1939, and he was on his way to the Democratic Convention. Yeah, he was a Democrat back then. Well, the reason they arrested him, he was wearing a Ku Klux Klan outfit, and he was marching with the Klan. Yeah, he had the hood on and the white outfit. Yeah, he did. You have one hanging in your closet too, do you, son of a gun? Yeah, like father, like son. That's a good one. So anyway, he was arrested. He was booked. It's been in the newspaper. They've shown this. Actually, I think the Daily News, forget the Times. I think, that paper doesn't even exist. Maybe the Post, one of the more recent tabloidy papers a few years ago when they were talking about what a sterling upright citizen you are. They published, they had it in the paper. So that was one thing. The other thing was, so I went to school out at Archbishop Molloy High School, and you lived up on the hill right above us. So you were on the top, the Shikskas were on the top of the hill. The Jews were sort of on the side of the hill. The black community was the rest of Jamaica, which used to be Irish. My mother was born in Jamaica, and it used to be an Irish neighborhood. Nowadays, it's a black neighborhood. There's a whole story about the Irish and the black community and who's called what, but I'll hold that for another show. Listen, there was just one more thing. In the paper the other day, they mentioned that you didn't have a lot of empathy. E-M, you can Google it, E-M-P-A-T-H-Y. Check it out, yeah. Well, sociopaths generally don't have a lot of it. It's one of the few things you don't have a lot of. But you're like Dad said, it'd probably ruin your career if you had a lot. Listen, maybe we'll make it next week. All right, we've been talking too much already. We're almost 5 minutes into the show right now, so I'm just going to hang up. If you want to call next week, you could give a call. Bill Barr, he's another one. He could give me a call. Rudy, there's a piece of work. Pence, do me a favor. Don't even tell him to call me. I get nervous just looking at that guy. I really do. It's not sure whether it's him or or Jared, but the both of them are sort of these sort of translucent kind of vampire. Whereas you're a solid guy, I can see you. You know. Yeah. Anyway, like I said, let's kill it for now. And next time you got a chance, give me a buzz, and we'll talk again. Okay. Bye now. So that was a. Let's see. This is it's what they used to call a telephone. Remember these? This was wireless too. How about that? Little antenna. Wow, wow. This is under archives. So I said I was going to reconstruct the show I used to do, and the show was originally called IamPaul.com, the TV show. And I used to focus on poetry, politics, and tea. And I would deconstruct we do the call first. We do the serious poem, followed by the telecon. And the telecon would be a Bob Newhart. Bob Newhart, he was a comedian back in the 60s, 70s, maybe even bled into the 80s. He originally started doing stand-up, and then he had a TV show. Well, when he did stand-up, he would do a one-way call with a historical figure. The classic one he did was Sir Walter Raleigh calling, and he spreads the cape out so that the Queen can walk across his cape. It was a classic Bob Newhart kind of thing. So I sort of picked up on the idea, and that's how we get these telephone calls come in. So after the calls, then what I try to do is I try to focus on the news for the next few minutes. I try to do, the most ridiculous story of the week, the most outrageous story of the week. Do you believe he said this? I mean, I can't believe he said that. That kind of thing. Sometimes I'll do some longer historical kind of stories. But today, I'm going to do a couple of minutes, and I'm just going to talk about three things. Television shows, not even the newspaper right now. The three last shows I guess I watched that are relevant would be Rachel Maddow, Bill Maher, and John Oliver. Well, last night John Oliver really got into what's going on with the post office. Now, you may have heard rumors that the post office is going to run out of money maybe before the election. So the post office might not be able to deliver the mail-in ballots, which some states are trying to see that they can get going in order to have a what they consider a functioning democracy. I don't really think that the vote count is going to be directly correlated to a functioning democracy. If everybody got out and voted right now, today, and tomorrow, yet everybody was severely influenced by what they see on, I was going to say on TV, but more on their favorite TV, because things have gotten more narrow as people, as the digital age progresses. We see less and less of a broad spectrum of views and more of a narrow spectrum of views. So if somebody's watching Fox News all day, they're in a completely different world than somebody who's reading the newspaper, reading a magazine, watching other news stories. There's this whole big sort of hullabaloo about how, the liberal media, tell me the New York Times is liberal. Yeah, give me a break. MSNBC, Rachel, she's got enough chutzpah there that she's actually gone after General Electric on a number of occasions. Now, she doesn't make a regular thing of it, but she does bite the hand that feeds her now and then. Bill Maher, libertarian, dope smoking libertarian, progressive sometimes, conservative sometimes. I like him. He goes off the wall here and there. So let me go back to one. We're going to go back to John Oliver, and he does a story in the post office. And they may run out of money. Why? Because they're running out of debt. Why are they running out of debt? Because in 2006, in a bipartisan vote, and how this became a bipartisan vote, bipartisan, is beyond me. But they put in a post office new regulation. And they required the post office to fund, ad infinitum, the pension funds by putting $5 billion, 5B with a billion dollars, a year aside. Well, the year before, they were straddled with this ridiculous request. It was a law. Post office isn't part of the government. It's an independent organization. They're sort of quasi, but they're like in between the two. But they're not a private company, and they're not a government agency. Go figure. So they get straddled with this ridiculous new law. So they go from making something like, I don't know, $400 million one year to the next year they're $3.5 billion in the hole. Hello? How did that happen? Well, Jesus. They were making money continuously. And suddenly they're not. They're in the hole. And that's all we've been hearing about for the last few years, how inefficient they are, how they don't know what they're doing. These guys, when I say these guys, I mean them, and you know who they are. The corporations, the lobbyists, the really wealthy people. They're trying to get rid of the post office. They want to get rid of the post office. They want to privatize it. Trump, just the other day, is screaming in the White House about how they ought to raise their prices there to make Amazon more competitive. Well, you idiot Donald, who we just hung up on, they're not allowed to raise their prices according to this postal law. So they're strapped with this where they can't raise their prices. They have this ridiculous debt that's running them, keeping them running in a hole. And he ended the show with this little postal delivery lady doing a TikTok, I don't know, a couple of second video where people move a lot, and she's delivering mail. So they show her with her hands on this side, and then she goes to deliver the mail out the door on the other side, and then she's using as a backdrop other TikTok videos. Very clever. And the interesting thing about it was the postal delivery person. So I mentioned this to my postal delivery guy this morning, who said, "Yeah, hi, Paul," he says, because he knows my name. He gets my letters. He knows my name. And I mentioned the show to him. Well, hopefully he's going to go back and mention it to a few other people. Maybe a few other people see it. Maybe everybody in the post office will take a look at the show. They'll tell their friends to watch it. And maybe we can get a little bit of a citizen's reaction to this whole thing to decrease the debt that they're carrying, give them some money from the government, and keep these guys functioning as they ought to be in a functioning democracy. We need mail. We need newspapers. We need a certain flow of information. We can't narrow it down to Fox News and Donald Trump as the loudspeakers. Otherwise, we're dead. So that was John Oliver. The show after that would be, I'll do this quickly, would be Bill Maher. And there were two things about his show that were really grabbed my attention. One was he had a libertarian on the show. Don't know his name. And I got to go back and watch the show, because the guy does what these guys have been what these conservatives and libertarians have been doing since day one. They'll bring up an issue, and they'll start to put some relevant facts out. So in this case, the relevant fact that the guy brings up, and he does it 2 or 3 times during the course of it, he talks about how our democracy is screwed up and how our voting is screwed up and how the lobbyists are in charge and taking over and blah, blah, blah. Totally agree with him. This isn't a Republican, a Democratic issue. This is a humanitarian issue that our democracy is taken away from us. And he recognizes that at the ballot box. He then goes to make a segue, and I can't remember what the hell the segue was about right now, but he winds up with this absurd position, this absurd libertarian position. Like I said, I'll go back and relook it. But it was the same thing I encountered when I was a member of the Conservative Book Club years and years and years ago. These guys would just start with one rational thought, and they would somehow twist it around to some irrational thinking. Really, really weird. The last one is Rachel. Rachel, I'm watching Rachel. I watch Rachel almost every night. I can hardly go to bed without watching her. The woman is having a nervous breakdown, trying to wrap her hands around how many people are dying every day, what our response is, and how we are literally the worst country on the planet dealing with this virus. Third world countries are dealing with it way better than us. We could talk about how we're dealing with the virus, our response to it, and the economic reopening, which they're attempting to do. This will be a big part of what I'm going to talk about. And what in back of me you see is this tipping point. And the tipping point is the point where what was is going to meet what's going to be. And generally, when this kind of thing happens, it's triggered by some kind of an event. And in this case, climate change wasn't even close enough to do it. It took coronavirus 19, CB19, to put us in this position. The economy's collapsing. The democracy is collapsing. Fascist rulers are taking over and pushing themselves in all over the place. We here in America, we have militant right-wing loonies running around in Michigan with AK-47 strapped around their neck, barging their way into the legislature. California should have sent the National Guard there to shut them down. New York and California both should have sent National Guard there to shut these people down. In the paper today, the GOP is threatening to make sure we leave these people in place who are screaming for blood. So a lot of people have been worried that the revolution in the street may happen. Well, these people are there, they're armed, they're ready to go. Now all we got to do is get the old left-wing, not progressive, but the old staunch lefties who were pro-gun to meet the right-wing pro-gun people. We could put the both of them out there and let them have a little battle in the middle of some place between, Michigan and Illinois, maybe. That would be a good location. And the rest of us can sit back and watch from the, make believe it was a TV show. Like, remember Gulf War I? That turned into a TV show. I don't know if you remember. I was sitting in somebody's house one night when shock and awe was happening, and he was just thrilled watching this thing, and I was just really upset. Okay, Rachel, Bill Maher, John Oliver. I didn't mention Mornings with Tom Hartman, and that's where the sociopathic reference earlier in the call came from. It was a psychiatrist was pointing out that Donald is a sociopath and has absolutely no empathy for people in general. He dislikes human beings. Okay, so that was the news. Now we're going to go to part 2, and I've already extended myself over. I went 2 minutes over, so I'm 17 minutes into the show. I'm trying to keep it as a 30-minute show. So the second half of the show, we change gears. We look at positive things that are happening, and the original thing I did was I interviewed a woman working on world peace. Well, where would I find her? I'd find her every week at my local health food store, and I would stand at the deli case. Remember when we used to have deli cases, open food, I'd stand at the deli case, and I would say, is there a woman working on world peace? Every week, honest to God, every week, for 50 weeks. Every week for 50 weeks. Somebody would respond and say, yeah, I just came back from the United Nations. I just did a world tour with my dance troupe, and we were promoting world peace. I'm working on neuropsychological programming. I just invented a machine, about something. I wrote a book. Every week for 50 weeks, some woman would raise her hand. I'd say, do you want to be interviewed? Tuesday I would do this, and we do the show on Thursday. And we do a little interview on Thursday. Now, I'm not a very good interviewer, so I would keep the interview short, and I would mostly let them do the talking. I get a little anxious sometimes when I'm talking to a camera, and it's not like talking to people, which is why I'm trying to do this now to get used to this. The point is, I'm trying to learn how to do this, and I'm trying to learn how to tell stories. It's easy for me to get distracted, which I'm just doing right now. So, let's see, who do we got for women working on world peace? We've got, Jean Shinoda Bolen wrote the Goddess in Every Woman many years ago. Popular back from probably the 70s, 60s, 70s. Gloria is without a doubt one of my heroes or heroine. I really like Gloria Steinem. Way back when she started her career, she was the anti-feminist feminist. She's definitely a feminist, but a lot of people in the feminist movement weren't crazy about her because she would date different guys, and she was a different kind of woman from a lot of other women. Interesting, Gloria, she was talking about she writes a lot, and she was lecturing all the time, and I think she dated Norman Mailer once, and that was sort of Norman Mailer was sort of an interesting story. Anyway, Gloria Steinem, woman working on world peace. We do an interview for a couple of minutes, maybe about 5 minutes. Now I'm going to try to reconstruct that, and I've already talked to 2 or 3 people, but in the current environment, it's not going to happen in person. So maybe, if I can figure it out, I could do a Zoom meeting with somebody, and we can bring the Zoom meeting into this deal we're doing right now. There's a technology allowing it to happen. I just haven't mastered it yet. Another interesting one, I'm going to watch her in a few minutes, Rebecca Solnit, and I don't have her picture here, too bad. Although if you, oh, here it is, here she is, the picture that she goes with all the time. That's Rebecca Solnit, I think that's how you pronounce it. She lives out in, left is right, right is left, up is down, down is up. There you go, whoa, Rebecca. Okay, she's a great writer, this woman. She really is. She writes some really interesting stuff. And the book is called Men Explain Things to Me, and she opens up with this story. Men explain things to me and other women, whether or not they know what they're talking about. And she talks about this story where she's at a cocktail party, and this guy starts talking to her to explain to her this concept. She's the one who wrote the concept that he's explaining to her, and he doesn't want to listen to her. He won't even recognize the fact that she's the one that wrote it. He doesn't want to listen to her even talking about it, and he's talking over her. And she's the one who wrote what he's telling her about. I mean, that's about where it is. So she's been around a while. She's going to be on City Arts and Lectures tonight at 7:30, which is about 7 minutes away. So I'm going to try to wrap this thing up in a minute. So I'd interview the woman working on world peace. We'd finish the woman working on world peace. Then I'd change gears one more time, and I'd bring out my little tea setup. And in this case, well, we got a full camera on this or not? Let's get the full camera. It still doesn't make it available, does it? No, it's going to have to be higher. All right. Well, anyway, this is what the tray looks like. And here's my hot water in my little thermos here, okay? Here's my little tea cup, cute little cup from the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. I have the tea in my little Chinese type tea cup. Now this is, I put this tea in earlier, I drank this tea earlier. It's a Drum Mountain White Cloud. I had it for breakfast. The first time you steep a tea, you're going to take 90 to 95% of the caffeine out within the first minute. The flavonoids, the flavor that are in there, are going to retain, but the caffeine, which is an acid, is going to come out quickly. So what I'm going to do is, this is probably my 5th, 6th, 7th steeping of this pot of tea for the day. And it's a white tea, Drum Mountain White Cloud. So I'm going to pour a little hot water on here. And this water is more than likely around 200 degrees. It's still steaming hot. So it's a little bit off of boiling point. And what they do with the tea when they have a cold pot of tea or a fresh dry tea, they put the water in and then they pour the first steeping right off. Now, most tea aficionados or heavy-duty tea people will then not much flavor, not a lot of flavor. It's they would just toss this off. It's sort of waking up the leaves. We're waking the leaves up. So while the leaves are waking up and you get a little bit of water on them and they're sitting there sort of opening up, because tea takes a long time to open. You can steep tea 2, 3, 4, some of them 5, 6 times even. So we opened it up with a little hot water. We'll put some more hot water on it. And we'll let that steep for a minute while we read a poem. We got 5 minutes left. I'll tell you what, let's go with, you know, I brought another poem book down here to read, and it doesn't, oh, here we go. This is Nikki Giovanni. Nikki Giovanni, one of my favorite poets. Nikki Giovanni, she reminds me of me sometimes. She writes poems, and some of them are poems and some of them are not poems. And she's got this inaugural poem she calls. It's called the inaugural poem. It's not really. It's a stream of consciousness kind of writing. But in it, she points out here, as JFK pointed out, there is no school for presidents. There's no school for parenting. So people keep doing the things that make them parents, just as voters keep doing things that make them presidents. I thought that was sort of a interesting concept, especially since when I became a parent, when I was 21 years old, it hadn't exactly been like, oh, I'm practicing to be a parent, or I took a home ec course. Like, nothing. What are you kidding? And suddenly I had 2 kids. Later on in this piece, she says the exact same proportion of salt to water in the sea is the salt to water in the human blood. The ratio of salt to water in the ocean is the same as salt to water in our blood. So, all we really know is that we are connected with everything and each other. What a profound statement. We are connected to everything and to each other. And that's sort of what I said earlier on here. She sort of, in the next part of the sentence, she says we ought to put our guns away. And if we can just for a moment talk it over, and let's think about the new world we are borning. Every action you take in the moment is creating the future. But the future is nothing but a compilation of things that just happened. You can't change the past. You can't. The only way you can change the future is by changing the present. So you can change the present. You can change how you react to things, which would put you in the position of acting instead of reacting. I'll give you one last line from the poem, then we're going to wrap it up. This poem understands that we cannot put a floor on poverty until we're willing to put a ceiling on wealth. If they are willing for us to define profits for business, we will accept their definition of freedom for humans. So what she's talking about here is the political economy, as it stands right now, is screwing the poor people and favoring the wealthy, who then exert political influence to keep the whole circle going. It's time for us as a group to rise up and redistribute the wealth so that all of us have something. Nobody's starving, nobody's homeless, and we all get along together. We can do it. I know we can. That's what the whole plan was in the first place. And with that, we're going to sign off tonight and see you next week.